So Strategy Group has been around for over 35 plus years. We started in the construction realm, doing software and consulting. We've 20 plus years now under our current ownership. About 10 years ago, we acquired a company that was focused on manufacturing, distribution, and CRM with some very great talent, which we were happy to get. One of those persons will be presenting today. And so we've been doing manufacturing now for over about 10 years. We just completed a pretty big implementation for a multinational medical device manufacturing company, but we spend most of our time working with smaller manufacturers who are looking to grow past some of the basic tools that they've been using. So, one of the things that we find when we're talking to customers, potential customers, is that one of the big challenges they have is inventory management. And that is forecasting what their need is going to be to produce the orders that they have on hand. One of the, solutions to that is to just buy a lot of stuff. And make sure that we have it, but that's not very effective when you're trying to manage cash flow. And the other thing is capacity and resource planning, availability of equipment, and how that might affect some of the production. And it's speaking kind of more towards when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I need a rush order," your best customer, for instance. How do we negotiate that? The Acumatica Manufacturing Edition, which is what we'll be showing you today to demonstrate these things, has a number of modules to it. The two that we're going to focus on today are going to be the MRP and the Advanced Planning and Scheduling. I won't read these to you, you'll get them in the recording, but one of the key features of material requirements planning is just really basically knowing what our orders look like, what our production schedule looks like, and what do we need to actually manufacture what we're trying to make. And then advanced planning and scheduling is the ability to manage, that first point there is pretty key, to manage finite and infinite capacity. Of course, infinite is a fixed schedule. There's an absolute date to it. Finite is really the real world, what we deal with every day. When, again, somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I need 50 of these things, but I need you to move up that production." And then the other one is this capable to promise in that same scenario. And I think with that, Rebekah, I'm going to just kind of turn it over to you and let you take control and show everybody what we just talked about.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Could you let go of your screen share so I can grab it?
I can do that. I think I can do that. Oh, here we go. How's that?
All right, thanks. All right, hello everyone, and hopefully you all can see my screen, which is the manufacturing dashboard for Acumatica. Anyone confirm?
Yes, we can see it, Rebekah.
Great, thanks so much. I always like to make sure before I get too much into any presenting that people can actually see what I'm talking about. So today we're going to show you, as John was saying, elements of Acumatica manufacturing as it relates primarily to MRP material requirements planning and scheduling, some work center scheduling, both infinite and finite capacity planning. I'm going to start off the presentation today, though, with just sort of an overview of Acumatica. I won't go too deep into it, but I just want to at least give you all an orientation as to what we're looking at on the screen and what it might mean to you. So first of all, Acumatica is a completely web-based SaaS or PCS private cloud, can be deployed either in the cloud or on your own internal servers. And so because it is completely web-based, it's running inside of a browser. And what we're looking at here is a manufacturing dashboard that has been created specifically for this sample company that gives us a number of significant data points or information that is useful to a manufacturer. Dashboards are one of the key distinguishers of Acumatica. They are kind of, you know, once you get beyond menu-driven and screen-driven use of any ERP system, dashboards are really what allow you to go to the next level of being able to focus in on just what is important in your organization, whether it be manufacturing, finance, distribution, anything else that you need to do to run your day-to-day organization. So we're looking at a manufacturing dashboard here. Dashboards in Acumatica are role-based. In fact, all of Acumatica is role-based. So the security and capabilities and the functions that people you know, use every day within the system are based on the roles that they have within the organization. Just by way of pointing out that there are some other types of roles that dashboards exist for in Acumatica, again, based upon who you are within the company that you work in, you may see different information on your home dashboard. All of these dashboards are just examples of the kinds of things that you can do in Acumatica. There are some out-of-the-box dashboards that come with the system. You can also customize and tailor dashboards to meet your specific requirements, both operationally and financially. So this particular manufacturing dashboard is presenting a number of different data points that might be of interest to someone who is in a manufacturing operation. Again, these are just different examples of types of things that you can display. So you've got a number of production orders in the system. They have all different statuses. And being able to present information in this way is a great snapshot overview of your organization. But one of the things to know too is that these are not just pretty pictures. All dashboards within Acumatica are drillable and have information behind them to support the numbers that you see. So by looking at, for example, this production orders by status dashboard, as I hover my mouse over the different segments of this donut chart, I can see that there are all different statuses assigned to the work orders that are in the system. But clicking on that one, as you saw, opened up another tab up here. And drilling into that tab, this allows me to see the detail behind all of those production orders that are in that released status, and a released production order being one that's been created and has now been released to the shop floor for operations. So dashboards are just an absolute fantastic element and one of Acumatica's best capabilities, being able to interact with the system and just focus in on the things that are most important to you. Another example of one here in a manufacturing environment would be to see all the purchase orders that are late. So when were they promised and what are they and who are they for? And then again, drilling in on any one of these, all of these elements are drillable. So clicking in on any specific transaction will be able to bring up that transaction for you. So clicking on that purchase order, I can see what that purchase order is, who it's to, and what it's for. So that's just a little bit about dashboards and a little intro there. Again, you can completely customize those to serve up the information that just you care about. So it could be specific to your areas of operation within the company. It could also be things that are very specific. So let's say you have very key items that you want to keep tabs on. So you could take a look at dashboard information that presents just those key points. So the next thing I'm going to get into with respect to Acumatica Manufacturing is just by way of introducing you to the structure of the information that you have in the system. This is a fairly limited demo today, so I'm not going to drill into all of the possible things that we could look at. We could spend all day doing that, but we won't. But I do want to give you, draw your attention to some of the important elements of the setup of Acumatica Manufacturing, so that when we look at the MRP and the capacity planning and scheduling, that some of this is a little bit more meaningful to you. So one of the base elements of Acumatica Manufacturing is a bill of material. So this uses lists of inventory items from the inventory module, can also use non-stock items if you have other elements of things that you process production for that are not stocked. It includes support for outside processing. That could be a whole session in and of itself, how Acumatica deals with that. But taking a look at this particular bill of material here, just as an example, this is for a Keurig coffee maker. And I'm just bringing this up to show you what are the kind of base pieces of a bill of material within Acumatica. Every bill of material has at least one operation and an associated work center. Some of the production that you do may be fairly simple and may just have one operation. Some of the production that you do may have many operations that your product must undergo between, start and completion of manufacturing. So everything within Acumatica Manufacturing is operation-based. And we have with each operation on the bottom portion of the screen, the material that is required to go into that operation. You can introduce material at different steps throughout the production. This particular bill of material doesn't have any material introduced within the inspection step. Everything is introduced at the assembly step. But in order to optimize your inventory usage and perhaps also optimize your cash flow, if you have long production cycles, you may want to associate inventory materials with later operations if things aren't all needed at the beginning of production. I'm going to mention here too that I mentioned before that you can have outside processes built into your bills of material. I'm not really going to go into that today. You can also have tools associated with your production and machines associated with your production. And I started off by saying that Acumatica Manufacturing is bill of material based. If you are a company that does a fair amount of custom manufacturing, that is, things are different every time, and it just doesn't really work for you to have a standard bill of material, there are some different ways of dealing with that in Acumatica. One is that there's an option for a configurator that allows you to have different configurations of items that you produce. Another is that you can have a base bill of material that essentially has nothing in it. And if you build the things that you build custom every time, then you can create sort of a custom bill of material on a one-off basis. And of course, you can do a combination of all of those things. One other thing I'll draw your attention to with respect to the BOMs and the operations and work centers. There is our work center definitions elsewhere in the system, and I'm not going to go through all of the screens to show you that, but I will talk about the fact that you can specify your operation times in several different buckets here for each work center. They're typically specific to the BOM, but they can also be modified on the production order when that's created. Also behind the scenes within each work center is a calendar, and if you need to, several shifts that will help you schedule the operations within those specific work centers. So if you have multiple shifts for production, you can build that in. If you have different calendars for either within your main production facility, or if you have multiple production facilities, you can set up those calendar hours. Do we work 4 10-hour days or 5 8-hour days? Is there a swing shift for production? Is there perhaps shutdown for year-end inventory or shutdown for holidays? So all of those things are elements that you can build into your keeping track of in Acumatica Manufacturing for your production facility so that you can properly plan and schedule your activities. So the next piece here in the Acumatica Manufacturing sort of story of what it can do for you is the production orders. So some companies call these work orders, some companies call these manufacturing orders. They're really all the same thing. It's an internal order to your operations, to your production plant to make something. Production orders are based, again, on the bills of material. They can be created in essentially 3 different ways. So one is that you can manually enter a production order, just say, I'm going to make this thing. I'm not going to bore you by walking you through how production order is entered and created, but I hope you can just trust me that you can just manually say, I want to make 10 of these, whatever it is that you're making. And by the way, these could be final finished goods items. They could be sub-assemblies. Sub-assemblies can be made to stock or made to order, all of the things that you would expect from a fully functional manufacturing system. So manually entered production orders is one way in which you can have those generated. A second way is based on a sales order. And just to point that out, I'm going to go in here and have a look at a sales order that's been previously entered for one of those current coffee makers. So this is a sales order for just one of these for the ABC Holding Company. This sales order has been entered, and it's got a requested on date for delivery. This is probably more likely that I'm going to want that delivered in a couple of weeks. Typically, we're not going to make to order and fulfill that in the same day, but maybe if you have a rapid operation, you can do that. I wanted to point out that this particular item here has been marked for production. And what this means is that within a sales order in Acumatica, if you are the type of company that either always or sometimes wants to associate a customer order with a production order in the back end, and that is you are making specific to customer order, this is a way within the system that you can associate the sales order and the production order bidirectionally. So with that mark for production checkbox checked, there are a couple of ways that we could trigger creation of a production order for that sales order. So one is that I can go into this particular sales order itself and choose to create a production order directly from it. That's useful in an environment where you really want to control the creation of production orders based on sales orders. If you have a higher volume of production orders based on sales orders, and they're sort of being entered all day long, another way that you can go about it is within the production order module, you can go to a screen where it will create all the production orders that are necessary based on other elements in the system. And in this particular case, there's some other activity that needs to be generated here, but one of them is to create a production order based on that particular sales order. In a real world environment, you may have many, many of these and may just want to create them en masse. And so this will help you with your efficiencies to be able to create all the production orders necessary to fulfill the sales orders that you have in the system. And the last way that production orders can be generated is based upon MRP, or material requirements planning. So I'm going to switch gears over to that for just a second and talk just for a moment about material requirements planning in Acumatica. This is essentially your supply plan, a material requirements plan that will tell you everything that you need to make and when you need to make it, and everything that you need to purchase and when to purchase it. And also alternatively, if you have multiple warehouse locations where you may fulfill inventory requirements by moving product from one warehouse to another, so perhaps you don't have to buy it, you just need to transfer it from another warehouse location, that is an option as well. So what to transfer and when to transfer it. So based upon how you need to acquire your inventory, whether you buy it, build it, or move it, you can use the MRP and material requirements plan to fulfill where any of your shortages may be. So your MRP is always, in any good MRP system, it's always going to be based on several different factors that that are in the system. The first one of which is, of course, current inventory levels, or what do I have in stock. The second element is your bills of material and your structure on those, including any lead times or process production times that you have. Also, as well, existing production orders, sales orders, and purchase orders that are already in the system. Acumatica MRP is going to take a look at your lead times that you have for both purchased items and production items, as well as your work center times and routings. And then optionally within Acumatica, you can overlay two elements. All of those things that I mentioned up until this point are are what I always call real things in the system. They are things that are already there and already committed, and facts that already exist, and you know that they are going to happen and expect to happen in the way that you have fed into the system. The other elements that you can overlay on top of that are master production schedule elements. So this is, John was referring to, you know, what if I get an order for another 50 from a customer? Maybe that order is not committed yet, but maybe it's a possibility. So you can incorporate into the system scheduled elements. So things that might happen, or things that you just sort of know that you want to account for. Maybe you don't have exact customer orders yet, but you might. Or you just know that, you know, certain sub-assemblies, you need to produce a number of them to stock. So you can build into your master production schedule sort of planned things that aren't tied to anything specific. The other element that you can build in is a forecast, and forecasted activity could be based on sales forecasts that you have derived elsewhere within your external systems and maybe want to upload into Acumatica. Acumatica has a really great capability of being able to import information into various screens throughout the system very easily, and typically in an Excel format. So forecasts can be manually entered or uploaded here. You can also use the generate forecast function within Acumatica to have it look at your historical sales history based on a number of factors. You can filter it down by different inventory types or customers. You can factor in a growth rate or whatever you want to do. You can have it look at some amount of history, and then based on sales history that has taken place in the system, and including if you want to have those forecast those to be increased or decreased over time, you can generate forecasts and have it overlay the forecasted activity on top of the actual activity that's already in the system. So that is an option as well. And then lastly, once the MRP is actually generated, and I am actually going to go in here and just do this very briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and process the MRP. And while this will just take a minute, of course, this is a relatively small system, but we've worked with companies that have a ton of activity and you know, hundreds and hundreds of bills of material and hundreds of sales orders per day. And this still takes just a few minutes. It doesn't take very long at all, even in a live environment. However, I do want to talk about the fact that you can schedule the MRP generation to happen at various times. So you can go and run an MRP on demand, ad hoc, like I just did, just go in and click the button and have it recalculate. Alternately, you can also have it run on a particular schedule. And this is a feature that exists throughout Acumatica for various different functions. You can schedule numerous different processes in the system to be run at specific times. So if you want your MRP to be run at 11 o'clock at night, you can do that. I have worked with one company that actually they have a lot of changes in a very dynamic environment. So they have it run once late at night and then once in the middle of the day at noon. And then they are able to refresh their planning activity based on the recent changes in the system. So again, generating the MRP looks at all of those factors that I mentioned before, your current inventory levels, your current transactions in the system, possibly the scheduled activity and the forecasted activity, throws it all up in the air, and then lands in a couple of different places. The first one of these is the Mrp Display. And I like to refer to this as Acumatica suggesting to you anything that you need to do that you have not yet done. So this is typically going to be anything that you need to purchase, or anything that you need to manufacture, or anything that you need to transfer from another location. And there are areas within the system where you can tell Acumatica how do I typically fulfill inventory levels based, you know, is this something I buy or something I purchase? So you can set that in several different areas. And I won't go into that, but just know that everything is sourced is probably going to be purchased, manufactured, or transferred. By the way, we can also schedule drop ships and purchase to order activities. So everything within this screen is something that we need to address. There is some sort of shortage somewhere that we need to deal with either by purchasing or by making or transferring. Over here to the right, we can see what kind of sort of requirement is driving that need. So we can see that there are different quantities here and different dates that we need to deal with these shortages, but we can also take a look at and filter some of the things that are driving those requirements. So as you can see in this particular case, a lot of these requirements are being driven by a safety stock. These are things that are below our minimum quantity. We can use the native functionality of Acumatica to filter out different things within the grid. So if we just say, you know, I don't really want to deal with anything right now that it's being driven by safety stock, just show me anything that's being driven by something else. So we've got a sales order driving this requirement. And in this case, this item is needed on a production order. Sliding over here to the right, you can see all the information that you need to see. If something is being driven by a specific activity in the system, you can see what that particular transaction is. These are the sales orders. These are the production orders. For anything that's purchased, you can, if you have preferred vendors identified for those items, you can see that. So whatever is driving those requirements, you can do all kinds of things within Acumatica, filtering and sorting to be able to zero in on just the specific items that you need to address, maybe the most high priority items. And then right from this screen, you can do what you need to do to either purchase or manufacture those items. So clicking on the purchase button will help you generate a purchase order to that particular vendor with the right due dates and everything else. Same is true for generating manufacturing orders. I'll also just point out, although I won't drill into the screen right now, given our limited time, that if you do have any questions about what specifically is driving a requirement, I have this come up a lot in the companies that I work with, that, you know, it'll recommend that you need to buy 500 of them, and you say to yourself, well, I already have a whole bunch on the shelf. Why is it making me buy more? Looking at the detail inquiry will bring you up another screen that will show you what are the specific events that are leading to that demand for that product. So there is a full audit trail for the MRP, so you can see what is driving specific things to be presented to you, and then help make appropriate decisions. The other element of MRP, we were looking at the Mrp display, which I said was, these are the new things that need to happen in order to fulfill your shortage. The other screen is the Mrp exceptions. And these are things that are already existing in the system. So they are already some form of purchase order or production order, but there is some sort of problem with those events that are already there. They're either too early or too late or too much or too little. So that's how I kind of boil down those 4 different things in the Mrp exceptions. So if something is late, you may need to expedite that. Anything that presents to you as delete is you have some kind of a planned order, but the system says, hey, according to your stock requirements and the activity in your system, you don't actually need to make this or buy this. So the Mrp exceptions will help you with either timing issues or maybe, you know, too much or not enough, like you've got the plan in place, but there's something wrong with the plan that you have. Okay, so that's Mrp. The next thing I want to move towards is the scheduling element of Acumatica Manufacturing. So that the Mrp material requirements plan sort of helps us with the supply issues. When do we, you know, how do we need to acquire more of something or acquire the right amount and the timing of that? The next element is the production scheduling part of it. So the first place I'm going to go is to the Workcenter dispatch screen. So we started off a little bit ago by looking at bills of material and the fact that we have different work centers. This Workcenter dispatch is going to show us what we have planned and all of the activity that we have in the system. This is based on production orders that are in the system. And then taking a look at the work center, and we can filter for just a specific work center if it makes it easier. These are all the things that we have in the hopper for this particular work center, as well as when their start dates and end dates are going to be, the production order that they are related to, the status of those production orders. And in fact, I do have a couple of items here that are completed, and I probably don't really care too much about those. So I can go ahead and, if my filter will wake up for a second, there we go. I can go ahead and filter those out and then just look at the things that I know are going to happen and have not happened already. So one way that you can look at this is by filtering by the work center and seeing what you have coming up. Again, this does not have anything to do with capacity. This is assuming infinite capacity. So this is suitable for a smaller operation where you don't really need to worry too much about having enough in terms of space and time to produce what you need to produce. Or if you're just getting started in having a more robust manufacturing system, or any manufacturing system, and trying to get your arms around capacity planning is kind of a next level thing, you can always start off with this level of planning. Note also that all production orders do have a status. The system does see planned orders, so those are those that are in the system but have not been released for to have activity posted yet. And then we also have in process, as well as you saw completed. Production orders can also have a dispatch priority, anywhere between 1 and 10. So based on whatever your priority is, you can see that here. You can, and in a different screen, I double clicked on there and I should not have, but in a different screen, you can actually change the priority either on the production order itself or in the work center schedule screen. So this is assuming infinite capacity, and it's just telling you what, sort of the start date, end dates. There's no time element to it. It doesn't know how long it takes to make any of these things at these particular work centers. So the next level would be finite capacity. So figuring out what you actually have the ability to make given the time constraints that you have. And I'm going to pop into this work center capacity screen to talk a little bit about how Acumatica deals with this. So the way that it works is within specific date ranges, you can define how many blocks of time that you have available. And the length of a block of time is completely definable by you. It could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be something more than that. In this particular sample system, a block of time is 30 minutes. So for these particular work centers on these particular dates, we have 18 blocks of time available to us, 18 30-minute blocks of time, or 9 hours. There are currently 5 blocks, 5 in the plan, and 18 available. So 18 available, 5 in the plan. So we currently have our utilization percentage at of each one of those numbers. So with 2 blocks of time being consumed in the plan out of 18 available, that work center is at 11% capacity currently. So, and the same is true for these other work centers on this particular, within this particular week. You can look at this on whatever date range you want to. So I could filter this out and look at earlier and later date ranges. And basically, this is your quick snapshot into what is your utilization and how much capacity do you have. So then given that, I can take a look at my work center schedule. And this is now showing us a little bit more on a work center by work center basis on a given day or date range up here. What kind of time do I have allocated for the specific production orders that have been firm scheduled to those work centers? And in this case, I only have, although I have all these other production orders in the system, there are really only 2 that have been hard scheduled to happen at specific times. So this particular production order is going to go through work center number 10, and it's going to take 2 hours and 30 minutes. the same production order is going to go through Workcenter number 30, and it's going to take an hour and a half, and so on. So the way that you sort of slot those specific production orders into specific time slots is in your rough cut planning screen. So this is sort of your whiteboard, or taking a look at all of the things that have not been firm scheduled, and then allocating exact production times and planning activities for your work centers so that things happen. You know what you need to make and when you need to make it within a given day or range of dates. So if you do want to go ahead and hard schedule something, you have several, I guess, ways that you can manipulate when you're going to schedule that activity. So one element is your scheduling method. You can choose to either, on the production order level, you can choose to either have a production order finish by a certain date or start on a certain date. So we're either taking the end and backing it up, or taking the beginning and pushing it out. So we can say that our constraint date is to finish on August 12th. It's really going to be November 12th. We're a little bit late. And then I can go ahead and select that and schedule that to be produced. And then that is going to show up in my Workcenter schedule. Getting close to wrapping up here, I'm just going to mention very briefly that we can also handle scheduling at the machine level and the tool level. I'm not going to go over those things today, and that we can also work in machine capacity. And then by way of recording production, which I'm also not going to really walk through entering any transactions today, but I just want to point out that when you do get to recording production against these production orders, there are several different ways and types of transactions that you can record. And there are also a couple of different methods that you can use to record those transactions. So you can record actual time, record movements between work centers, issue materials. There's the ability to do some disassemblies. As I mentioned before, you can also, Acumatica Manufacturing handles outside processing to outside vendors. So you can record shipments to those vendors and then the receipt of material coming back. One other thing that is, the menu option is not showing up here because I don't have it enabled in this particular system, but there is an opportunity to either enter all of these transactions, quote unquote, manually into the system through the screen interface here. If you want to sort of take that to the next level or need to do it via barcode scanning, that is another option. So rather than going into a screen and manually entering your production activity, you can also use a mobile device and record all of your production activity, including time and material movement, using scanning. So that was kind of everything I had planned to present to you today. I guess we'll kick it back over to John or Selena to find out if there are any questions.
Thanks, Rebekah. Yeah, it doesn't look like we had any questions. So obviously your presentation was quite thorough. But if anybody does have any questions that might come up or want to talk with us further about Acumatica or some of your manufacturing challenges, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get back in touch with you and set up a meeting to review that with you. And I think with that, we'll just end the meeting. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us.